Jonah lived alone on a small repair station floating between the cold stars of the outer belt. He liked the silence, the stillness, the hum of machines was his only friend, and he was fine with that. No wars, no noise, no people, just quiet and work. One day the silence broke. A sharp alarm echoed through the steel walls. A distress signal crackled through the comms, and Jonah leaned forward staring at the screen. It was not human. The signal pattern was strange, broken like someone calling from deep water. He narrowed his eyes and tracked the source, a small ship crashing toward the surface of the nearby moon, trailing smoke and sparks like a wounded bird. He grabbed his toolkit and launched to skip the journey. It took 10 minutes, but the view of the crash site made him tense. The alien ship had slammed into ground hard, its hull torn open, its engines flickering. Jonah stepped out and approached with care, not knowing what to expect. His boots crunched on black rock, and strange blue fuel leaked from a wreck. Then he heard a weak voice calling out from inside the ship. Jonah climbed in and found the source, an alien lying on the floor, chest heaving for arms, trembling, silver blue skin cut, and burned, one eye swollen shut. The alien looked up and said in a voice heavy with pain, "An effort, please. Help me. I need my ship fixed, or I die here, and so will my family." Jonah hesitated, then nodded. He pulled the alien out and dragged him to shelter in his skiff, patching him up with what little med gear he had. The alien winced, but thanked him again and again, calling himself Tyrak, a scout from a distant world far beyond any human chart. Jonah returned to the wreck and started work. The ship was strange, wires like vines, panels that shifted like muscle, nothing like human tech. But Jonah had seen enough machines to understand the basics. He worked for hours in silence, hands covered in black grease and alien oil. Tyrak watched him from the side, weak but alert. He kept repeating the same line softly, almost like a chant. "I will repay you. I will honor the bond you've earned." Jonah shrugged it off, thinking it was just a way of saying thank you in Tyrak's language. As night fell, the engine sputtered back to life. Jonah sat down, tired and sweating, staring at the ship he had brought back from the brink. Tyrak smiled weakly and said, "You have done more than save a ship. You have saved my purpose. You have saved everything. I must repay you." The human looked at him and said, "You don't owe me anything. I just did what was right." But Tyrak shook his head and said, "You do not understand. In my world, such a debt cannot go unpaid. I must offer you what matters most." Jonah frowned, unsure what that meant. He felt something stir inside him, a feeling he had not known in years, something close to fear, not of danger, but a misunderstanding of stepping into a world he did not know. He tried to rest, but could not sleep. He kept thinking about Tyrak's words. Away, he looked at him the way he spoke with such deep seriousness, as if this favor had changed something larger than Jonah could see. The next morning, Tyrak stood stronger than before, his wounds not healed, but his spirit brighter. He set it his time and sent a message through his ship's broken comms. Jonah waited confused and heard a low hum from above, a shuttle slowly descending from the sky, sleek and silver with glowing lights that lit up the moon's surface. Two figures stepped out, a tall woman with skin like polished stone, and beside her a younger one, graceful and quiet. Both carried small packs and walked toward Jonah with calm eyes and steady steps. Tyrak stood tall and said, "This is my repayment to you. They are my family, and I give them to you." Jonah felt his chest tighten, his hands clenched. As he said, "What are you talking about?" Tyrak replied, "They come to serve you, to stay with you. They are the most precious ones in my life, and you have earned them with your kindness." Jonah stepped back, heart pounding. This was not what he expected. This was not right in his world. People are not given, not traded, not offered as gifts. But the woman stepped forward and said, "We come by choice. We honor your help with our presence and loyalty. We do not come as slaves. We come as thanks." Jonah looked at them, looked at Tyrak, looked at the stars above, and felt the ground shift beneath him. He had repaired a ship, but had broken open a truth he was not ready to face. Jonah stood still, his breath uneven, as the weight of what just happened settled in his chest. A woman and daughter stood with calm eyes, their hands empty, their expressions soft but firm. He could not understand why they looked at him like that, like he was someone worthy of their loyalty, their lives. It made no sense in his world. Kindness was not traded. Kindness was free. He turned to Tyrak, his voice low. "What are you doing? This is not right. I fix your ship. But I did not ask for this. I do not want anyone given to me." Tyrak stepped forward slowly, each move like a heavy decision, his eyes glowing faintly with energy from his healing skin. He said, "Jonah, you must listen. In our world, there is no greater way to show respect than to offer what we hold dear, and I hold them above all things. They come not as payment, but as a bridge between us, between our people." Jonah's hand shook not from fear, but from something deeper, a kind of disbelief mixed with guilt. The daughter stepped forward, her voice gentle but steady. "I am Syria. I understand your ways are different, but we are not being forced. We knew this might happen. Our father told us long before. If he ever found someone who changed his path, someone who gave him new life, we would go with that person willingly, not because we are objects, but because we want to learn to live beside them and help them walk their world. The mother bowed slightly. I am Liera. I too understand this may feel strange, but in our hearts, this is not a burden. This is honor. Our people believe in ties formed by action. And sacrifice. You fix a ship, you save our bloodline. We come to repay that with time and care. Jonah sat down slowly, his thoughts racing. He had spent years in silence, years avoiding connection. And now he had 3 aliens standing on this dead moon, offering him something that touched his soul in a way he could not describe. He said, I do not know what to do with this. I am not a leader or a hero. I just fix things. Tyrak placed a hand on Jonah's shoulder. Your hands repair machines, but your heart repaired something greater. You reminded me that trust can live between stars, that even strangers can carry light in the dark. They returned to the station, the journey quiet, but heavy with unspoken words. The station was small, cold, filled with tools and broken parts, not a place for guests. But Syria walked through its halls with wide eyes, touching old panels, asking questions. Liera moved with quiet grace, cleaning surfaces, organizing wires, making place feel less like a cage, more like a home. Days passed. Jonah worked during the day, fixing broken satellites, repairing ship cores, programming old systems. And at night, he listened to Syria tell stories of her world, a planet of glowing forests and oceans that sang when the wind touched them. She spoke of music, made from stones and trees that whispered in dreams. Liera cooked strange meals that smelled like smoke and sweet fruit. Her food warmed Jonah in ways he'd forgotten food, while Tyrak rested in the chamber slowly healing, but always watching, always proud of his choice. One night, Syria sat beside Jonah on the metal balcony, staring at the stars. She said, Do you still feel strange about us being here? Jonah nodded. Yes. I do not know if I will ever feel right about it, but I also know I do not want you to leave. She smiled softly. Then you begin to understand not everything is owned, not everything is given. Sometimes it is shared, because sharing is stronger than owing. Jonah thought of Earth, of crowded cities and loud streets of people rushing and forgetting and choosing power over kindness. He thought of why he left to find silence in space, but now with these strangers who called him family, without condition, the silence was no longer cold, it was calm, it was safe. In the days that followed, Jonah taught Syria how to use tools, how to weld metal, how to balance engines. She learned fast her hands, steady her questions sharply. Liera mapped out supply routes, organized storage, built a garden from scraps using hydro systems Jonah had given up on years ago. The station became brighter, not just with light, but with life. Every corridor held footsteps and laughter. Every corner had a voice Jonah had not heard. Joy in years, now it echoed in steel and stars. One evening as they gathered for a meal, Tyrak stood. His strength returned, his body still marked by scars, but his voice firm. He said, Jonah, I will leave soon. I have told my people your kindness. They wish to meet you. They wish to open a path between us, and you're kind. But know this, what you did here, what you gave, without asking, without expectation, changed more than my life. It may change worlds. Jonah looked at him, then looked at Syria, and Liera, his hands resting on the table, rough from work, but warm from presence. He said, maybe I did not fix a ship. Maybe I started something I cannot see yet. Jonah awoke to the low hum of the comms panel flickering on and off like a heartbeat in the dark. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, as red lights danced across the metal walls. Something was coming, not just static, not a routine alert, but a live signal pulsing with strange rhythm, like a language he had not heard. Before he stepped into the control room, his fingers tapping the interface. As the signal grew, louder, sharper, more desperate. Syria rushed in, her face tense with confusion. As she asked, what is it? Jonah replied, I do not know, but it is not from any human outpost, and not like your ship. Either it is something new, something close. Liera joined them, her calm voice layered with caution. She said, sometimes in the silence, something wakes. I should have stayed asleep. Jonah looked at her, then turned back to the screen, and the signal repeated 5 tones, then a pause, then 5 more, always the same, like a call waiting for a response. Tyrak entered, moving slow, but steady, his face drawn tight. As he saw the display, his voice dropped low. That is not a distress signal. That is a warning call from the old war days. Something lost, something forgotten, meant to mark danger space, infected by ruin or worse. Jonah stared at the screen, his thoughts racing. If this was a warning, then something out there had survived, something that others had long left behind. He pulled up the local scan, overlay, a small shape moving fast between asteroid fields, no transponder, no lights, no sign of life, but too precise to be a drifting rock. Syria leaned closer, her voice sharp with concern. That is heading straight for us, and it will be here soon. What if it heard your beacon? Tyrak shook his head slowly. No, this is not a random path. It is tracking a repair signal from when the engines flared. It found us because of what we fixed. Jonah's heart pounded as he pulled up defense protocols. None active. The station was not built for war, only repair and quiet. He turned to the others. We need a plan fast. And smart, we cannot fight. But maybe we can hide. Or distracted, Liera walked to the panel, scanning nearby debris, feels her hands moving quickly. There is a small mining rig 2 clicks from here, long abandoned, but still with energy cells. We can lure it there below the cells and fry its sensors. It will not be destroyed, but it will be blind long enough for us to disappear. Jonah nodded. It was risky, but better than waiting for something unknown to knock on their door with claws. Instead of words, they loaded the skiff with signal boosters, power cores, and ion flares. Every move calculated, every second precious, as the unknown ship drew closer, silent and cold and full of questions no one wanted answered. Syria piloted with tight focus, her hands gripping the controls as the skiff weaved through dark rocks and dead machines. Jonah placed the boosters, carefully syncing them to echo the station's signal. The trap would only work if it believed the rig was the source. Tyrak watched the radar, his eyes locked on the screen. The shape was closer, now moving faster, too fast for a surveyor, too sharp for a miner. This was a hunter designed to end threats, not study them. Jonah felt the weight of his choices pressing on his back. He had only wanted silence, then help, then peace. Now he was luring something deadly, with hope it would not kill them all. Once the trap was set, they flew back, silent and tense, watching the display as the shape altered course, heading toward the rig. Debate had worked for now. Liera triggered the detonation just as it entered the range of flash of white pulse of light, and the scanners went dark. The object slowed, drifting off path. Sensors scrambled, maybe damaged, maybe just confused. Jonah exhaled, not relief, but pause. They were not safe yet, but they were not dead either. He turned to Tyrak. What was that thing? Tyrak replied, an echo of war machine from the ancient fleets used to sweep space clean of survivors. Sometimes one is left behind, still chasing ghosts, still killing shadows. Back on the station, the silence returned, but it was different now, thicker, like it had memory. The team began to reinforce walls, recalibrate shields, patch old systems, no longer just for comfort, but for survival. Jonah taught Syria how to read energy signatures, how to skim beyond sight. Liera built a second comm buffer designed to scramble their signals when needed, and Tyrak contacted his people with a secure burst telling them the stars were no longer quiet, that the past had teeth. That night, Jonah stood on the balcony again, looking at stars that no longer seemed so distant. He thought of what they had faced, and what might still come. He had fixed the ship, helped strangers welcome change, and now built a home worth protecting in a place once silent and still. 3 days had passed since the encounter with the rogue hunter drone, but the silence that followed did not feel like peace. It felt like a breath held too long, like the stars were waiting for something more. Jonah tried to stay focused, working on shield arrays and sensor upgrades, while Syria practiced emergency repair drills, her hands faster and her eyes sharper each day. Tyrak kept to the shadows, often watching the skies through the old telescope, his face unreadable. Liera moved through the halls like a silent protector, her presence calming, and her eyes always scanning the monitors for changes. Nothing had appeared since the trap. No new signals, no strange echoes, only the endless hum of systems and the soft rhythm of life returning to the station. Then came the knock. It was not loud, not even clear, just a soft tremor along the outer hull, like a hand brushing against steel, like someone lost trying to find a door. Jonah froze when he fell to the floor, a subtle thump. Then another. Syria looked up from her console, eyes wide. Did you feel that? Jonah nodded slowly, fingers already moving to activate external cameras. The feed showed nothing, only the gray curve of the outer deck and the stillness of stars, but the motion sensors told a different story. Something was there, barely visible at the edge of the platform, its outline warped like heat shimmer. Something cloaked, something alive. Liera activated the emergency lockdown, but Tyrak stopped her with a single word. Wait. Jonah turned him. Confused. You won't let it in. Tyrak stepped forward, voice calm. That is not an enemy, not yet. That is someone wearing shadow, someone using ancient cloaking tech, but not attacking, not hiding, just watching. Jonah switched to thermal view. The figure became clearer, tall, slender, wrapped in layers of armor that pulsed faintly with blue lines. No weapons drawn, no movement aggressive. It just stood there like it was waiting for permission to speak. Jonah opened the exterior channel, his voice steady. Identify yourself. The figure paused and slowly raised a hand, not in threat, but greeting. The voice that came through was filtered metallic and old. I come in silence. I tracked the hunter. I saw what you did. You lured away and stopped it from reaching others. I bring no harm. I bring memory. Jonah glanced at Tyrak, who nodded slowly. That voice is Varnian. They were archivists during the old wars, watchers, not fighters. The figure continued. I am called a Rev. I lived through the burning of 9 systems. I watched fleets rise and fall. I have walked alone since then, gathering stories and warning survivors. Now I found you, and I see something rare. I see trust between species born from choice, not war." Jonah opened the airlock slowly, unsure but curious. When the door slid open, the figure stepped inside light. Bending around its cloak, it removed the mask, revealing a face, not human, not familiar, but not frightening either. Smooth silver skin with soft lines and eyes like flowing rivers of light. Irev looked around the station, taking in every panel, every corner, then turned to Jonah and said, "Your repairs saved more than a ship. They ignited something ancient, something most forgot, peace between different, cooperation. Not conquest. I want to help, I want to stay." The team gathered in the central room. Unsure what to say, Tyrak broke the silence by stepping forward, placing a hand over his chest, a gesture of acceptance in his culture. Irev mirrored the motion, then turned to Syria and Liera, both of whom nodded slowly, trust built not in hours, but in honest silence. Jonah asked, "Why now? Why come here?" Irev replied, "Because the stars are stirring. I have seen signs, ruins, no longer dormant beacons, reawakening. The hunter was not the only ghost out. There more will come. Old machines, lost fleets, broken minds wrapped in metal. I have maps, I have warnings, and I have seen how your hands turn chaos into function. You are needed." That night the station felt different, not crowded, but alive with purpose. Irev shared data from old star maps, places where danger slept, and signals, twisted reality. Tyrak reviewed battle strategies, lost to time. Syria and Liera studied alien languages and repair techniques. Jonah watched it all, feeling something bloom in his chest, not fear, not duty, but belonging. He went to the balcony, once more standing under stars that now felt less cold, each light a whisper of stories, yet told, each shadow a warning of paths not yet taken. He closed his eyes and felt the quiet weight of the future pressing gently against him, not heavy but real. Tomorrow they would decide where to go next. Tomorrow they would plan how to face what was coming, but tonight they were not alone, and that changed everything. Irev stood at the center table, a device that hummed like a sleeping star. Its surface shimmered with shifting lines and pulses of light, revealing old paths, routes buried in dust and silence. Each trail carried echoes of war cries and final breaths. Each signal marked a place where something ended and something else began. Jonah leaned in close, his eyes tracing the patterns across the map. He saw broken systems, stars gone dark, and forgotten moons circled by wreckage. Tyrak watched in silence, his arms crossed and his brow tight, as if reading a warning written in a language only he remembered. Liera studied the colors and pulses, noting how some paths flickered in patterns like whispers trying to speak across time. Syria stood beside her, eyes full of questions, and wonder. Her fingers twitched with the need to decode everything she saw. Irev pointed to a region beyond known trade routes, a pocket of space where no ships dare to travel anymore. It was there the signals came from, he said, soft and calm. Not just warnings, but calls, broken voices calling home, or cry for help, or maybe just echoes bouncing forever between dead planets. Jonah asked what they would find there. Irev paused and said, "Maybe ruins, maybe danger, maybe answers, or maybe nothing but empty silence filled with old fears and forgotten sorrow. But even nothing can teach something." They decided to go after 3 long hours of preparation and silent debate. They loaded the skiff with fuel, extra parts, backup shields, and survival packs. Irev gave them protective codes designed to confuse old drones and outdated sentries, their only defense if ghosts turned hostile. The launch was quiet, no speeches, no goodbyes, only a shared look between them, and a soft nod from Jonah. As the engines came to life, they left behind the station that had become more than steel, had become home and memory and beginning. As the stars shifted and the light bent around them, the crew sat in thoughtful stillness. Liera checked the navigation, while Tyrak calibrated the ship's course. Syria adjusted the internal scanners. Jonah sat with Irev, who stared out the window with eyes that had seen centuries pass and stars fade into myths. They reached the outer rim of the lost sector on the 3rd day. The space around them grew darker, colder, and heavier, like they were passing through a graveyard of forgotten time. Debris floated everywhere, old hulls shattered by unseen forces, metal bones drifting in eternal silence. Irev activated the beacon sensor, and a sound filled the skiff, not loud, but deep like thunder wrapped in sadness. It was a voice, not in words, but feeling, something trapped, something waiting. Jonah closed his eyes and felt the pull, not fear, not danger, but longing. Syria gasped as the screen showed a giant structure ahead, not a ship, not a station, but something between building to an asteroid, and shaped like a sleeping beast. Its surface covered in ancient markings and strange tech glowing faintly with blue and green light. They approached slowly, careful not to trigger defenses of the ship, landed on a flat ledge carved by time, and windless storms they stepped out together, the air thick with dust and memory. Each footstep echoed like a question no one had the answer to. Inside the halls were lined with murals, some broken, some whole. They showed images of stars and peace and war and loss. They told of the people who once dreamed of unity, then felt a fear and fire rev, walked ahead, guiding them through turns and doors and silent chambers. They reached the core chamber where a sphere floated in the air, surrounded by thin strands of light. Moving like slow water, Jonah stepped forward, drawn by a feeling. He could not explain the sphere, pulsed once and again, then opened to reveal a seat and a console made of light. He touched it, and the room came alive. Voices filled the space, not shouting, not screaming, but speaking gently one after another, stories from across time stored in that sphere, messages of warning, messages of love, messages of regret and hope. The console lit up, showing coordinate systems long erased from maps, colonies that vanished without trace, battles that ended without record. Jonah looked at the others and said, "This is not just a vault, this is a map of truth, the truth others wanted to bury or forget." Tyrak stepped forward, his voice heavy. "If others find this, they will destroy it, not to hide the past, but to control the future." Irev nodded yes, and that is why we must protect it, or take it where it cannot be taken again. Syria asked if they could move it. Irev replied, "Not all of it, but the core, yes, with care and time." They prepared the extraction, while Liera adjusted the skiff to handle the sphere's energy signature. It would not be easy, but it could be done. As they worked, the lights dimmed slightly, the sphere pulsed again, and a final voice spoke to the chamber, calm and distant. "If you found this, then remember we were here, we tried, we failed, but we dreamed, and maybe you will too." The skiff floated to the silent path between dead stars and broken moons, its lights dimmed to avoid attention, its engines whispering through the dark. The core sat in the middle of the cargo bay, wrapped in protective feel, humming with old voices. An ancient power Syria sat beside her, eyes wide and full of wonder, her fingers resting gently on the surface, feeling the soft pulses like a heartbeat buried in stone. Jonah watched it from the front console, his mind spinning with questions and plans and worries. He had never felt so small and yet so full at the same time. Liera stood near the back, adjusting the scanners, while Tyrak kept watch through the viewport. His hand, never far from his sidearm of the silence outside, had lasted for hours. Irev remained still, eyes closed, as if listening to something beyond the stars, something only he could hear, something calling from the edges of time. They had made it out of the ruins, but not without costly extraction, had triggered a signal. Something had stirred in the deep sensors, had picked up faint movement. Hours later, something old and cold, and watching, Jonah knew whatever had built the hunter drone might still be searching, waiting in the dark for signs of life. Suddenly, a soft tone echoed through the ship, not loud, not harsh, just enough to freeze every breath in the room. Unknown object approaching, speed, high direction. Lock. Liera set, eyes wide, as her fingers danced across the console, trying to isolate the signal. Tyrak leaned in, his face tense and jaw tight. Jonah moved to the window, his breath caught, as a shape slid out of the black void, sleek and silent, and sharp, its surface blacker than space, its engines giving off no heat, no light, just motion, steady and slow, like a predator hunting its prey. It was a ghost ship, old tech mixed with new design, no markings, no call sign, no sign of life or signal. It drifted closer, like it already knew where they were, and why. Jonah shouted for evasive maneuvers. Liera pulled the ship into a hard roll. Syria clung to the core of her body, shielding it from impact. A beam of light cut through space, grazing the side of the skiff, not a weapon, but a scan of the entire ship, lit up with red warning, system breaches, attempted hacks, energy drain. Starting, Jonah hit the emergency shield. Override sparks flew from the walls. Tyrak fired a pulse flare from the rear turret, blinding the sensors for a few seconds. The ghost ship paused just for a moment, just enough time for Liera to jump to full burn and flee. Jonah held on as the ship shuddered, engine screaming. As they pushed past safe limits, Syria still held the core, her lips whispering soft words like a prayer or a promise. Rev opened his eyes and spoke one word: "They will follow." Jonah asked why now, why this. Rev looked in with sorrow. "Because the core holds truth, and truth is danger to those who live in lies. They will not let it go. They will chase us across stars to bury what we now carry." They flew through asteroid fields and magnetic storms, each second a fight, each breath a choice. The ship groaned, but held. Liera's hands never shook her focus. A wall of calm. Syria began transferring some of the core's data into the ship's internal memory, slicing it into hidden fragments to spread across the network if they failed. Tyrak kept firing countermeasures, one after another, not to stop the ghost ship, but to delay it, to confuse its senses, to buy just one more second. Jonah kept the ship alive, patching systems, rerouting power, balancing between speed And protection, his thoughts sharp as heart loud. They reached a binary system, two suns spinning like dancers locked in a forever waltz. And there they made a choice. They would not run further. They would hide in the heat and the chaos of twin stars, where signals bent and tech failed and ships lost their way. Liera directed them into the orbit of the smaller sun, setting the ship into a tight spin using the magnetic field to scramble their trail. Syria placed the core into the shielded vault, deep in the hull surrounded by layers of false data. Irev linked the vault to his own cloak field, masking the signal almost perfectly. Tyrak stood, the ramp gun in hand, his body ready, even though there was no ground to stand on, only fire. In sky, Jonah joined him, watching the horizon where the ghost ship had last appeared. Nothing came to scanners, remained quiet. The ship floated in the embrace of fire and gravity. They waited for hours, no movement, no sign, no attack, only the quiet dance of stars and the low hum of the core deep in the ship, like a forgotten voice breathing again. That night, or what they called night, Jonah sat with Syria and Liera and Tyrak. In a rev, they said nothing for a long time, just listened to quiet, and felt the weight of what they now carried, not just machine, not just knowledge, but something far more rare and heavy. Hope. The ship drifted in the silence of space, hidden between waves of solar radiation, wrapped in the heat of twin stars, where no ordinary scanners could reach it and no enemy would expect it. The crew sat together in the small common room, tired eyes watching each other, the weight of truth pressing on them like the heat outside the walls of their ship. Jonah stood slowly moving toward the core chamber, his hands shaking not from fear, but from something deeper, a question that refused to leave him, a truth that begged to be understood. He entered the vault, the lights, low, the air, warm hum of the core, rising and falling like a soft breath. Syria followed him, her face calm, her eyes glowing faintly from the energy she had absorbed through her connection with the artifact. She spoke gently, as if afraid to disturb the air around them. She told him the core was not just data, not just power, but memory of a time before the Empire, before war, before division, when the stars were still young and voices spoke in harmony across galaxies. Jonah listened, his heart heavy. The idea of peace, so old, had been forgotten by every race, now replaced by fear and control and conquest. He touched the core again, and it pulsed under his fingers, showing him flashes of light and sound, of vision of ancient beings sharing knowledge across vast distances, floating in unity, their shapes unknown, and shifting, their voices made of song and fire. He stepped back, tears in his eyes, not from sadness, but from the sheer beauty of what had been lost, and what now might be found again. If only they could protect it, if only they could share it. Suddenly alarms echoed to the ship, red lights, flashing walls, vibrating from distant energy bursts. Tyrak shouted from the cockpit. They found us, Liera confirmed with bitter whisper. It was a ghost ship again, but this time it was not alone. Two more ships followed it, their shapes dark, and twisted weapons charged their signals, silent, no warnings, no demands, only movement, fast and final. Irev walked to the center of the ship, his body calm, his face glowing with strange light. He told them he would face the ships alone, that they had done enough, that it was time for him to repay the debt he owed to those who had died long ago, trying to protect the last piece of hope. Jonah refused at first, shouting that they stand together, or not at all, but Irev only smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder, telling the core would need someone to carry its truth forward, someone with hands to build and heart to believe. Syria cried, but she did not stop him. Liera gave him a small nod, and Tyrak handed him the emergency beacon in case he made it back. Irev stepped into the small scout vessel powered by a fragment of the core, shielded by Syria's energy, and launched in the bay without a word, without a pause, moving directly into the path of the enemy ship's light, surrounded him as he approached their formation, not as a soldier, not as a threat, but as a message. They fired anyway, but their weapons passed through empty space as Irev vanished in a burst of light and silence, reappearing behind them cloaked in calm. He activated the core shard within his ship, releasing a pulse of ancient memory, a wave of sound and thought and emotion. So strong it cut through their systems, their minds, their very ships began to break apart, not from damage, but from understanding. The ghost ship cracked open, its systems collapsing under the pressure of memory. The other ships fled, but the damage was done. A signal had been sent, a warning and a promise. Back on the skiff, Jonah watched the screens fade to quiet, the space outside calm again. No fire, no death, only the trail of light where Rev had been. He never returned. They waited for days, but the beacon stayed silent. The stars moved on, and the crew drifted through quiet, holding the core, holding the truth. They reached a small world near the edge of a forgotten system, an old station still functioning, barely hidden under layers of false signals and magnetic storms. There, they stopped, repaired the ship, passed messages through secret networks, whispering of what they had found, what they had seen. Others began to answer. Ships from dead colonies, explorers with questioned scientists with old maps, rebels with broken dreams. They came one by one, drawn by the hope of something better, something true. And through it all, Jonah kept the core safe with Syria and Liera and Tyrak by his side. He did not claim to be a leader or a hero, only a mechanic who had once fixed a ship and found something more. The story of the offer remained between them, not spoken, not forgotten, just carried like a scar and a gift. In time, the stars would change again, and maybe, just maybe, something old would rise to light the darkness once more.